So you want to be a medium. Are you overwhelmed with ghosties trying to get your attention?
Are you ready to step into the big leagues? How do you know if you're ready? Right?
Do you have what it takes? In this video, we're exploring where it starts and where you want to take it from there. And if you have any questions as we go relating to the topic of this video, drop them in the comments.
Yes.
If we don't get to your questions live, we'll answer any questions on the replay.
On the replay.
On the replay.
You have to stop following the herd and start thinking for yourself, looking deeper to crack the code. And that's what we're going to be covering today. And while that's going to be entertaining with some free juicy information, we do have an offer at the end to take your metaphysical business from basic to bodacious.
Bodacious.
Because that's what is our full-time gig. That's what we do all week when we're not here with you guys.
Absolutely. And all that we ask in exchange is that you check out the offer, because that's what keeps the lights on, pays our sushi bill, feeds 2 hungry dogs and 1 bougie cat.
I swear we're going to bring one of them on camera one of these days. If you're just getting to know us, I'm Heather.
And I'm David.
From ZenMostGarden.com.
If you're new, consider subscribing, click that bell, and you'll be good to go. That bell down here.
And if you are a healing arts professional, we want to get to know you. Or if you want to be a healing arts professional, put a hashtag HealingPro in the comments and let us know what you do. Are you a Reiki master? Are you a Theta healing expert? Do you pranic healing? Are you physical medium? What do you do? We want to know.
Yeah.
Because we are here to help you confidently catapult your personal healing influence into the world in a big way. Little bit about us and why we do what we do before we get into the subject. What we noticed from a lot of our students from all over the world training to be metaphysical pros, that there was kind of a huge gap in what was taught by a lot of the systems in our niche that we're just kind of renaming and repackaging the same stuff. I see it online all the time. We create new names for the same chakras. We create new names for the same systems. So we've literally, for 11 years of teaching students and as a healing team, try to find ways to help people understand the foundation for their system. So because some of the people came to us with, from teachers or systems, really not the teacher's fault. It's just kind of the systems, teaching all the cool intuitive techniques without a foundation of self-growth to stabilize it.
And others taught self-growth without having a clue of what to do when people started opening up their intuitive skills.
And both groups of students were frustrated with how limited their growth was because many systems lack integration.
No matter how many papers they collected, they still lacked that foundation.
If you stay to the end, you'll see what we do when we're not with you. So let's get into the topic for today. So when you tell someone that to learn how to run, you have to use your legs. Okay.
Right.
Like use your legs to run. Okay. That doesn't really teach you anything. Most of us can use our legs to run, right? But most of us don't know how to use them properly if we're going to be professional runners, like what muscles to use more for sprinting or for long distance, how to hold our bodies.
Right. And for those things, we learn from a coach who understands the use of the legs, for example, and how to eliminate many bad habits that can cause injury, especially if you're choosing to do it as a profession. If you're choosing to train professionally, you get somebody who knows the ropes and knows how to train you in ways that you don't necessarily know. So
becoming a professional medium is no different. There is training and technique. Otherwise, you're kind of dabbling, which is fine.
Absolutely.
But
so that's mainly the difference between a hobby medium and a professional medium. It is a skill set just like any other. And you don't know what you don't know until you train.
But everyone has the sensitivity of mediumship. This is my belief. Okay. Some people are like, they're natural. No, they're born, they're made, whatever. But everyone has the sensitivity of mediumship naturally, because we believe that it is a function of mind. So, but it is either active or it is dormant within a person. Where it is active, it is popular in this day and age to call those people natural born mediums.
Kind of reminds me of natural born killers or natural born talking to people who have been killed.
Don't kill people with your mediumship.
Kill people with
this
mediumship.
This is not what physical mediumship is for.
Talk to dead people with your mediumship. Don't kill them so that you can talk to them.
Yeah.
Anyway, for those who seem to have none, it might be assumed that they simply don't have it. Maybe they're broken, when in fact, it can simply be dormant.
So a light switch has the ability to turn on a light, even if it's never used. You just have to find the light switch.
Kids are born with sensitivity. It either stays open or it is shut down. And that's based on how their abilities are received from the outside world and how that particular gift is perceived by those around them. So Chandra, I'm going to get it. Chandra says, what is your guys' take on the spiritualist church?
I think the spiritualist mediums developed incredible systems for mediumship
overall.
And my traditional training is in spiritualist medium. I'm certified as a spiritualist medium, but the spiritualist church, they were like formed during the 1800s. So you have a lot of religion in there too. So it depends on what you want. I think the training is really good. For me, I'm not a churchy kind of person because I like spiritual theory. I like to study theology, but I'm not stuck in one system. Because there's a system beneath everything that's common.
But as far as mediumship goes, a spiritualist medium is probably, in my opinion, one of the best trained mediums out there.
I think the systems that they've developed are pretty solid. Do you want to be a medium or just look like one? Right? That's the question.
Do you really want to be a medium or just look like one?
So today we are going to talk about your natural mediumship.
Maybe it's me, but we're going to talk about natural mediumship a little bit, how it starts, and a couple of, I know I'm crazy, and a couple of tips to help you decide if you're ready for training.
So because you could hobby all day long and that's cool, or you are ready to train. So let's do this. So
now it's time for the good stuff.
Here we go.
Now it's time for the good stuff. So here we go.
So tip number 1, natural ability versus training. So when I was young, I was taught by my parents. I really didn't even know what the term mediumship meant, but I was taught that connection to the spirit world, like when spirit wanted to talk to you, was something that happened when spirit wanted it to happen. It was going to happen. It didn't matter who you were, you're going to get the message. So I didn't grow up with the term mediumship, so I didn't realize then that this is what it was. It was just a normal part of my upbringing that the spirit world delivered messages. So my question, which is cool, but my question was as a child, because I'm not child, right, is if there is a channel where this communication takes place, there have to be ways to develop and control it and communicate in real time instead of just sending prayers out and waiting for the phone to ring, because that was kind of the method, right? So believe me, I asked my parents and all of the people at the church.
So but my question before you move on a little bit, my question is, isn't that like waiting for a guy to call or waiting for a girl to call, sitting at home and just waiting?
I've never been good at waiting for the guy to call. I'm like, I'm going to hit you up. Are we talking or not? So
anyway,
so my parents, I asked, but my parents' belief system did not include techniques or methods other than to pray, to remain receptive and open, and to keep the mind and the body pure, which some of those are good things to do, right? And the rest was just kind of random. It's going to happen when it happens, and you're not really in control of it.
So those practices form a really good foundation, and they're a great starting point for developing mediumship, because you know that you're the receiver, okay? Because you're the receiver, you know how to receive. Today, however, what we're going to be doing is we're going to do those things a little differently. And well, we do those things differently today and nowadays.
Like he's talking about our personal practice.
Right. So we do things differently than the way that Heather grew up, but they still include physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, and social health, building that foundation.
But at the foundation, at the base is, are you a solid instrument to receive and transmit? And that's the key. And that's kind of like the beginner thing. And that's what I was taught as a child. But other than that, beyond that, it was just kind of like, when it happens, right? So
it tends to be pretty random. That's like, okay, I feel like a run today and I'm going to go run, but you're not necessarily training to be a marathon runner. If you choose to do it as a profession, the good thing to do is to go out and get some training on it.
So, I mean, really, they were right as far as the foundation is to keep your mind pure, your body pure, eliminate, negative thinking, all of that is a great foundation to start with. As the medium, get that you're an athlete in a sense, like that's your elite practice, your athleticism your mediumship athleticism is to keep training the vessel, Let's get into what happens. So let's say this is your experience as a child.
Opening back up. This is tip number 2, opening back up.
So we've been talking about opening spiritual portals that were once closed, and what does that look like?
The last couple videos.
We talked about psychic portals in the last video, and you as an instrument, and that can get kind of chaotic if you don't know what's happening. So for me, and I think many kids, because most kids and probably all kids are sensitive to the spirit world before they shut it down, if they shut it down. And it is no problem like say, for instance, the spirit communications that I was taught to look out for, listen for, are of a lighter feeling. They're more angelic feeling.
Positive, good feelings,
right?
But when they are suddenly hit with some kind of negative emotions that are not theirs, there's often no healthy construct to understand what those are.
And I think this is where the shutdown can start with a kid. Okay. And if you're trying to open back up, or even if you're already a practicing medium and there's some old programs that can come up, like in your practice, maybe during a reading, like when something negative starts to arise or you feel it. So for me, here's I'm going to describe what it is. For me, I was taught to pray it away.
All the bad stuff.
I would suddenly feel like the negative emotion come in, which is really, if you're open to the sensitivities of listening for spirit, right? It's kind of on that same channel in that same space. So it's like, if David's sitting here next to me and he feels happy, I can feel that happy emotion. It feels good. If he's feeling like really terrible, I'm going to feel that emotion, but I'm not going to react to him any differently. If he's like happy and I'm like, yay, let's play. If he's sad, I'm going to go, oh, you're sad. I'm going to give him a hug. I'm not going to react differently, or I'm not going to be like, oh, you're sad, get away from me. But we do that
with spirit energy.
Right. So for me, I was taught that when that feeling comes in, it's definitely an evil spirit.
Right.
Right.
So how do you deal with it?
So even though I'm feeling the emotion on the same channel, it's kind of confusing for a kid who's like, so for me, I was taught to pray it away because it is definitely evil. I invoke the name of Jesus or some other thing to protect myself, call in the brotherhood of the church to cast it out. And for me, there was, I feel both things coming in all the time, and it was getting really old because I was open to those sensitivities, and I knew there had to be more effective techniques than just, it's okay to feel the good things, but everything else is evil. And I also, if you're here talking to me, I discovered later that there are, it's just like, think of this, like, he's because he's feeling something horrible doesn't mean that he's evil. It's just that it's coming into my field of awareness
on the same channel.
So
I think it does get pretty old though, right?
It gets really old, right?
Yeah. So there are definitely more effective techniques when the emotions of a spirit who has not crossed over, a stuck spirit that comes into proximity, you may feel some sudden intense emotions that don't necessarily line up with your current mood. Like you're feeling all happy and all of a sudden you're feeling pretty sad or pretty down or pretty angry or whatever it is. This is just your senses that are observing and your mediumship activating, just like someone who comes into a room who's in a bad mood. If you're standing in line at Starbucks, for example, and somebody behind you walks in and they're just in a horrible, crappy mood, without turning around, you can feel that. That's just your senses, your spidey senses, paying attention to the gauging the emotions of those around you. Same thing with spirit communication.
And here's the thing, a lot of empaths, because I know a lot of you are empaths and super sensitive, but I'm going to talk about empaths and I'm going to talk about untrained empaths.
Right.
Okay. So when an empath is balanced and using their gift, we call it a clear empath.
Clear
empath. So an untrained empath usually takes on the emotion when this energy hits them and they don't see where it's coming from. And they take on the emotion in some way, or they go straight to feeling attacked either by spirit energy or someone else's negative energy. Like David is angry. Right?
Yeah.
I like him, so I'm going to give him a hug. But if you are receptive to these sensations in your energy body, when you panic or try to pray them away, you're telling your mind to shut down the systems that feel sensitivities, positive or negative, right? So now you may become numb to them. You might shut it down.
Because you're shutting down the channel on how you receive emotions or feelings, whether it's yours or somebody else's. And the thing here is to realize that when an emotion comes in, until we train it, when an emotion comes in, our mind believes it's ours first. So it tries to process it as our own. A part of the training is learning to distinguish between what is your emotion and what is not.
Right. And I think that might answer some questions that are coming in.
Yeah.
It's a matter of training and increasing your sensitivity. So so one thing can happen is you shut down the channel completely. And this is how, you might have closed down the channel earlier in your life. Or what happens often with untrained empath is that it backfires.
Because of fear, and they become even more hypersensitive.
Right. So now you're like, you can't leave the house because you're like, I'm way sensitive to everything. You've actually, what you're doing is you are igniting and amplifying your sense of fight or flight.
Your spidey senses are on way overdrive because you believe you're basically saying that there's more to be protected from. So you need to be more hyper aware.
And either way is not effective for training your mediumship accurately. It's sort of like when you're burning out your adrenals. Like, you know, you're just energy pounding energy drinks and coffee, and you never get enough rest. You're going to burn out your adrenals. You're going to burning out your mediumship adrenals. I
wanted to get into a couple questions. How do you know if you're actually talking to a spirit or if it is just in your head? Practice. Practice and training is how you're going to learn to distinguish the difference between whether it's an actual spirit or whether it's just something going on in your head. And
certainly there are a lot of angles to that that go into the way your brain is working, the way your previous ideas about yourself are working. So that's a pretty complex topic, and it would have to be specific to what's going on in your head, right?
That's definitely a topic that we can take and use in another video.
Absolutely.
Chandra says, most of the time I'm able to ask what I call my bouncer to filter out the worst of it.
Right.
Yes, and that's actually something that we educate our students in in Zen Ed Academy is how to call in your team, your support team.
And I think that's one of the most important constructs of mediumship is to, you know, have that sort of gateway system so that you have more control of your gifts, because there are techniques to control it.
And just like an Olympic runner, for example, they know how to control their muscles, they know how to control their stride and their gait, and it becomes natural over time. Same thing with mediumship, same thing with psychic development.
Well, so I think with mediumship, you start off with all of these like abrupt emotional things happening to you, and then you either get afraid and shut it down, or you train it. And what happens is that a lot of those techniques are like, okay, I have to think about putting the key in the car. Now I have to adjust my mirror. Now I have to look over my shoulder.
So when you're first learning to drive a car, you're aware of all of the little details that you have to be aware of while you're training.
And so what happens is after a while, those systems become integrated, and I got to go to the store, you grab your keys, you get in there, you buy the groceries. You don't think about those 100 steps that it took to get you to the store and back. It's integrated. Same thing with mediumship. When you first start training, it's very
detail oriented and very kind of broken down into smaller pieces so that you can understand all of those pieces for the education part and the training part. Once you get familiar with it, then it becomes like driving a car and you just get in, you go.
Automatic. You're not going, I have to do this, and then I have to do this, and I have to talk to my guide. And it's just like boom, boom, boom.
Because you're putting the things in place that build the foundation for it to become automatic.
You got to take the time to build it.
Yes. Sandra says, speaking about senses, tell me why I always feel that it's weird and strange, but I think by now I should be used to it. I don't know that we're ever fully used to it. You do get more acclimated to it when we're talking about picking up emotions from others or picking up senses from others. We have our natural senses, and those include our psychic senses. And in my opinion, our psychic senses are actually our first senses, and our physical senses are kind of our second, if we're spirit first, and then inhabiting a physical body. If you take that perception.
You've got different states of awareness that you toggle in and out of all day long. Sometimes you're not aware of it. Like when we phase off and start daydreaming, suddenly you're in a different brain state, but you don't realize that you got there, and you're like, wow, that was weird. So
and then Chandra says, this is the juiciest live stream I've caught with you guys yet. Thank you for this. Yeah, we're kind of going a little bit deeper into some pretty cool topics today. And then Gina says, what is your take on light language? My take on light language is that it is the kind of like before it gets into formulated word, communicating on a level that goes beyond the need for formulated words or even thought.
I think it's like scatting for New Age people. There's a lot of different ideas I have around it. I mean, is it an actual language that's coming from some place? I mean, I think you can communicate with expression. I think it's very expressive and beautiful, and you can communicate with a piece of art without there being language. And I think sometimes things like light language can get you out of your way and just immerse you directly into the feeling of the message.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be specific words. It's like when you hear Louis Armstrong scatting, right? It's like, oh, it just elevates you and brings you into this emotion very quickly without having to think about it.
And it's also kind of similar to the way that somebody in a foreign country who doesn't speak the language can still communicate without words.
Well, like you could hear someone speaking a different language, and depending on how they're speaking the language, you understand the message.
As well as the body language, as well as everything else around it. It's more than just the words.
Well, when someone says, you know, I love you in a different language, you feel the I love you.
Right.
So it's the same kind of thing. I mean, is this making sense? We like to give you different angles because we're talking about, in the spiritual world, subjective reality. We all see it differently. We need it interpreted differently. We need to hear different ways to access it so that we personally can have the light switch can get turned on. And light language, I think, is one of those tools that can get you into that.
Get you out of your way.
Right. Get you out of your way and get you straight into what that feeling is for you.
Now it's poll time.
Let's do it.
And this is a hot topic, but we want to know your opinion. Okay. Mediumship.
Do you have to be born with it?
Yes or no?
Okay, you already know my opinion. I think we're all born with it. I think everybody's born with it. It's just, are you shutting it off or not? So I think I want to talk about, are you ready for the big leagues?
Right. Now it's tip number 3.
And I think for me, before I even get into this tip, I believe that it is really useful for all of us to develop our mediumship. And the way we approach mediumship in our practices is we work with a person individually, you know, in a healing context. So we're spiritual healing is kind of our private client practice. But what we really like to do at the end of the day is help a person connect themselves to their loved ones. Because that you can take with you. So we've always loved to teach people, okay, here's the foundation. I feel like you're, you know, it's not just about us delivering messages to you. It's about how do you take that with you and maintain that connection with grandma and grandpa. That when you feel sad and you're in grief, and, you know, how do you connect for yourself? Because I think in so many other cultures it's a natural connection. Oh, let's connect with grandma. Let's connect with the ancestors. They have ancestor altars. They have this visceral connection to the ones that they love, but we don't necessarily in their own way, but we don't necessarily teach our kids a construct for that.
Right. So Chandra says, I think some people are born with natural inclination to be musically talented. Some people are born with bad eyesight. Some people are born with perfect eyesight. It's just like any other sense. Just 100%. Because you're born with the inclination doesn't mean that that's where it ends. Absolutely. And that's kind of why, to us, training is important. If this is something that you want to do and that you want to get good at, training is a definite big key piece to move on to the next level.
Here's the thing, and I want to put this in the terms of music because I was a professional magician. I was a professional musician.
I didn't know about that life. That was cool.
Not this life. For 20 years. Okay, so I was born with like songs in my head and music going on, and like I know I can sing, and I could like feel myself being the singer. And I look in the mirror. I must have a past life as a singer because I used to look in the mirror as a little girl, and I could see an adult woman who was singing. Whether that was my adult self in this life or a past life memory, you know, who knows? But in order to take that natural inclination for music, I had to spend hours studying, practicing, refining my skill, matching pitch, learning rhythm. So, and you might say that after 20 years of learning the skills, you could see a musician or a violin player and go, they're a prodigy. They're like amazing. But it takes many, many, many hours to develop the muscles it takes to separate the notes, the ear, all of those things. It's the same thing with mediumship. So I think you can teach the skills of music to just about anyone, but that doesn't mean that you want to. So, and
the key component is the practice, the hours that you put in practicing your craft, if it's something you want to do. So, do you want to be a professional medium? Okay, let's say you have some raw natural talent and want to be of service to others, because that's what a lot of spiritual workers want to do. You've watched every episode of the Long Island Medium, right? The Hollywood Medium. Ghost Whisperer. That's not a real show, but
it's based
I
on.
don't even know if that one's real.
Well,
You know that you can do this too.
So the thing is, don't skip steps. Like you
Yeah.
can't just go from I can sing happy birthday real well to being a professional singer, because you've got things to consider like stamina, right technique. Can you sing 3 shows a night and get it right? That's practice. So that goes way beyond talent.
Right.
So first is to develop a solid foundation for yourself and your personal practice.
Don't skip steps.
So a lot of people want to skip steps and go straight to being professional in whatever field they're naturally
So
talented.
if you've got, for example, a 5-year-old that has never played a violin, picks it up, and I love Chandra, she says, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? If you've got a 5-year-old that has never played a violin, okay, pick up that violin and go to Carnegie Hall, and they have never trained, they are going to probably pull out some crazy stuff that may not be very good. They're going to play probably like a 5-year-old with a new violin.
And here's the thing, of course, there's a difference between a style and a gift and the training it takes.
And the training, right.
So you can have a style and a gift that's uniquely yours, but you got to develop it. So first thing is to develop a solid foundation for yourself and your personal practice, because it starts with you. It starts with you singing in the shower, right?
Yes. And this takes time. And most mediums or most psychics end up rushing into professional life before they're ready and before their gifts are stable.
And so by all means, we encourage you to practice, volunteer, play, understand, and most of all, understand your motivation for wanting to be a professional medium. Because a lot of people, motivation starts off as one thing, because it's cool and it's fun and I'm a magic 8-ball, and that kind of thing. And it's like, it's really kind of fun to see these things start to manifest in yourself. But you have to kind of, your motivation needs to evolve.
You have to not only be willing to be a clear channel for all of those happy light messages, right? The positive stuff, but also to understand that there are some sad folks that, like spirits we're talking, that may not be able to cross to the light, and you need to develop skills to talk to them too and to eliminate your fears.
So that takes time and practice. So imagine, and this is kind of the thing we run into with people who are starting to train in mediumship, is that the constructs they didn't learn when they were young for dealing with the heavy emotions start to come up. They're going to come up. So imagine, and they're just like, I just want to do messaging. I just want to do message mediumship. I don't want to learn about, well, imagine an emergency room surgeon who will only work on patients who just need a happy face Band-Aid, but refuse to help the guy that just got rushed in with a gunshot wound.
So if this is you, keep practicing until you can do both with grace and ease. And that is the sign of somebody who has worked their craft to the point where they can become a professional.
Now you're ready to be a pro. So, but you need to do it first for yourself, because your most important thing is what's your motivation, because motivations tend to change over time. You know, I think I see people's first motivation because it is fun and I want to share it. I want to show what I can do.
Right.
But then your motivation, as it seasons and matures, it becomes different. It's more of service. It's more of, it brings you joy.
So get seasoned.
It's more about, we all start off with a little bit of ego, and then that gets refined and it lightens. And then we're in joy with it. We're not in obligation to the gift, because if you're in obligation to the gift, I have to do this as soon as possible because it's my calling and people are expecting me to do it. There's fear and ego in that.
There is no time limit. Don't put any pressure on yourself. Okay. Get there when you get there.
Right.
Being in touch with the spiritual side is something that can bring everybody peace.
So first, become a clear channel for yourself. You may only ever use your gift for yourself. You're alone. And there is nothing wrong with that. But this is where you have to start anyway. Stabilize the practice for yourself. And then what's going to happen if you are doing it with the right intent and with the right 11, the right intent, I guess is the word I'm looking for, is you'll naturally start to use it for other people. It's just going to be a natural part of your life, which is kind of how it's supposed to be.
So Root Dada says, why is there always a sense of pressure to only do traditional psychic mediumship readings or demonstrating that they actually do it? I want to hone my craft, but not to prove it to anyone. I struggle with this part of it.
Honey,
do it for you, girl.
You are not. Let me put this out there, because this is what something
that gets people caught up.
You are not a magic 8-ball.
And you don't need to be.
Okay, when you're not putting pressure and prove it. I don't give readings to people who come in and they're like, I need it to be proved. The best messages come through for me when I'm working with the client, when it's natural. It's like, oh, here's this, and it's a proof of identity. They're like, oh yeah, that's a specific thing. But when you have someone that is, wanting the prove
it attitude,
you're gonna get whoever wants to communicate is gonna be like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You're not coming with the right energy.
The prove it attitude is one of the quickest ways to shut down a reading. So if you want to have a reading with a medium or a psychic or anybody in the intuitive arts, and you come in with a prove it attitude, that is the quickest way to jack up your reading and get the most crazy things they're not going to benefit you.
How do you think your ancestors are going to react to that?
Prove it. Huh?
I'm going to be like, sorry.
Go prove yourself.
So yeah, I think that also when this is a very common problem when people are starting to learn mediumship, is that there is that pressure to
prove it.
The client is going to believe me. I'm not going to make an ass out of myself.
Because you're attaching your identity with the practice, with the cool stuff that you can do.
It's just something that's coming through you.
Right.
It's not for you to prove or not prove.
And Chandra says, answer is practice, practice, practice.
Yes.
When I first started out, it was because I wanted to impress people.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. That is actually a natural thing because we like social acceptance, right? We like to feel like we're valued members of society. So we can do something cool that sets us apart, then we're not going to get kicked out of the tribe. Just saying. Lourdes also says, but that does evolve. And she says that has changed drastically over the years. Absolutely. And that's the seasoning part that we're talking about. Lourdes says, is it possible to have your gift triggered not by a traumatic or intense experience, but when someone enters your life that has intense energy?
Yeah.
I never noticed anything until I started dating my hubby.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can have a trigger person or a trigger event or something big. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. That opens you up.
Think about resonating frequencies.
Yes.
Like when David and I met, it was like zing, zang, zadam. It was like all this shit opened up and it was like craziness.
So we want to know if you are more excited now that you have these tips.
It is a revolution here at ZRG, and we are fighting back against lost fairies and unicorns, running amok, giving you all kinds of crazy info and causing chaos.
And we love them both. But sometimes they drink too much love and light, end up puking rainbow frosting all over the carpet, super hard to get out.
So we're on a mission to crack the codes and revolutionize this field, make you happier with more joy in your practice, having fun, not having to prove yourself. When you're, I'm going to go back to her comment.
Do it.
Because when you are feeling like you have to prove yourself, you might still have a little bit of, I need acceptance from mom and dad.
Yes.
So when that comes up for you, go back and look at where you were like, I have to get acceptance from mom or dad. When you self-actualize and realize you have nothing to prove to anybody, but you're challenging yourself to access information and to help someone, then you become a much clearer channel and you're just like, okay, here's what I'm getting. Does it mean anything or does it not mean anything? You know what I mean? There's less pressure on yourself. And when there's less pressure on yourself, you just open up and you experience your craft with joy and not pressure. That's where we strive to get our clients, our students to. And
we want to shout out one of our Zen heads.
Dee shared her experience with us on the Google machine. I thought this one worked really well for today. She said, I had complete terror of the other side to the point of it crippling me. And now I feel safe and carefree. Thank you so much, David and Heather.
And that's one thing that we love to do is to take people from the fear of this. And most of the time it's from being shut down as a kid into the freedom that comes from training, education, learning your craft, and becoming better at just knowing stuff. Okay. The better you are at knowing stuff, the less afraid you are. If you've never seen a vehicle, if you've never seen a car and someone tells you get in it and drive, oh my God, you're going to freak out.
You're going to die.
I'm just saying.
We have learned that self-growth and developing your superpowers go together like sushi, Sapporo, and sake. It should be a natural, fun part of your life, not something you're afraid of.
Yep.
Got you. So is this right for you? Are you tired of mediumship advice that is way too complicated?
Are you tired of people telling you that the intuitive arts are satanic?
I can't with that one. I just can't. I've heard stories from you guys and I'm like, my head's spinning. Like my relatives wanted to lock me up. Like what?
Are you ready for psychic and mediumship training that doesn't scare the crap out of you?
It's just emotions, kids. It's not a submachine gun firing at you.
If so, Zen Ed Academy is the Rebel base. Gotta
Yes.
love the rebel base. Where the revolution begins.
Zen Ed Academy, in a nutshell, is where the science of self-growth meets the magic of mysticism. So this is going to work for you, even if you're allergic to fairy dust and just need real information without all the unicorn poop. I'm going to laugh if one day he actually sneezes and there's like, I'm going to like hear just in case.
That's called fairy dust. All the info is down below. If you still have questions, comment with hashtag tell me more or send us a message on Facebook at Zen Rose Garden or DM on IG. If you like this video, hit that like button 5 times.
And if you have any questions, let us know in the comments, because you know that's where we get ideas for new videos.
And for more mind hacking pro tips,
be sure to subscribe
and click the bell to turn notifications on
so you're the first to know
when we drop a new video.
Or go live.
And we know that time is a valuable and precious resource, and the fact that you guys have chosen to spend that not only with us, but most importantly for yourselves, leveling up your skills, we absolutely honor and appreciate that. I did want to catch one question before we leave. It's the last question that we have, and it is from Pointless Gamer. It says, do spirits try to trick you or prank you, like scare you? Just like people, okay? Sometimes spirits try to mess with your head and mess with you, but the question is, if you're strong in here, can they really mess with you?
Yeah, it's just
like people.
You got little brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, people are people with bodies or without bodies.
And people are strange when you're a stranger. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
See you in the next video.